Did police ever explicitly ask you if you hurt your wife?
Of course.
What did you say to them?
I said I've never harmed Lynette, and I never would harm Lynette, and I want to find Lynette.
She was an experienced swimmer. She had been sailing for over a decade. She knew those waters. And according to her husband, she fell off an 8-foot dinghy in the dark and was carried away by the current. Her daughter does not believe that. Neither does the U.S. Coast Guard, which opened a criminal investigation. And Bahamian police arrested the husband before releasing him without charges while still calling him a suspect. Lynette Hooker has not been found. Her body has not been recovered. The search has been suspended. The husband is back in the United States, and this case is far from over. April 4th, 2026. Lynette Hooker, 55 years old, and her husband, Brian Hooker, 58, departed Hopetown in the Elbow Islands aboard an 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy at approximately 7:30 in the evening. Their destination was Elbow Cay, where their sailboat, Soulmate, was moored. It was a short trip across water the couple knew well. They had been sailing the Bahamas for months and had made similar dinghy rides many times before. What Brian Hooker told police happened next is the account that has been at the center of everything since. He told authorities that rough conditions, high winds, and choppy waves caused Lynette to fall overboard. He said she was wearing the boat's engine safety lanyard at the time, a cord designed to cut the engine if the operator is thrown overboard. When she went into the water, the engine shut off. He said strong currents carried her away before he could reach her. He said he last saw her swimming towards shore. Unable to restart the engine, he said he paddled the disabled dinghy for hours through the dark before reaching the Marsh Harbor boatyard at approximately 4 in the morning, more than 8 hours after Lynette went overboard. At the boatyard, he encountered Edward Smith, an overnight security guard working the night shift. Smith told Fox News Digital that Brian Hooker arrived exhausted and asked for water. He said Hooker looked more exhausted than anything else. He called police. Authorities arrived around 5 in the morning, and Brian Hooker was still talking to them when Smith's shift ended at 7. The Royal Bahamas Police Force launched a search. The U.S. Coast Guard provided aerial support using an HC-144 aircraft, but the search yielded no results. In the days that followed, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force conducted extensive shoreline patrols, sea patrols, aerial drone surveillance, and submersible drone operations. Lynette Hooker was not found. On April 14th, Bahamian authorities announced they were planning to suspend the official search, saying they had run out of locations to search after analyzing tide, drift, and wind patterns. The search was effectively over. Lynette Hooker had never been found. What that press conference establishes for the audience is the physical reality of where this case sits. An 8-hour window in dark water, strong currents, a small dinghy, and no body. That combination, no body, no witnesses, only one person's account of what happened, is what makes this case what it is. The account Brian Hooker gave authorities in the hours after he reached the boatyard is the foundation of the entire investigation. It is also the account that his own stepdaughter, Lynette's daughter, says she cannot make sense of. In a recorded phone call that was later published online by a member of the sailing community named Stevenson, who told CNN he had recorded it to log the locations Brian mentioned, not to share publicly, Brian Hooker described what happened in detail. He said he was yelling for Lynette the whole time. He said the currents and winds kept them apart. He said he paddled for hours. The call was published after Brian was arrested because, as Stevenson explained, Brian could not speak for himself while in custody. Before his arrest, Brian also issued a written statement posted to Facebook. He wrote, "I am heartbroken over the recent boat accident in unpredictable seas and high winds that caused my beloved Lynette to fall from our small dinghy near Elbow Cay in the Bahamas. Despite desperate attempts to reach her, the winds and currents drove us further apart. We continue to search for her, and that is my sole focus." After his release, speaking to multiple news organizations, Brian said he would never harm Lynette. He said she was his life. He said they had been together almost half his life and they belonged to each other. When asked if there was anything he wished he had done differently, he said, I will always think there was something I could have done differently. My one job was to look out for her, and that has not happened. His attorney, Terrell Butler, said from the beginning that her client categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. She said he was cooperating fully with authorities. She described him as completely heartbroken and deeply distressed. A local boat captain who recreated the dinghy ride for Fox News Digital told the outlet he was shocked Lynette's body had not been found. He described the currents in the area as strong and said the conditions on the night of April 4th were rough. His assessment was that the account Brian gave was physically plausible given the conditions. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. He returned to the United States after his release, citing his mother's grave illness. He has since hired a Grand Rapids-based attorney, Crystal Marie Hazer, to represent him in the United States. Hazer told ABC News she was asking the public to give Brian the benefit of the doubt. Karli Aylesworth is Lynette Hooker's daughter. She is not Brian's biological child. And from the moment her stepfather called to tell her what happened, she has been the loudest and most consistent voice saying she does not believe his account. The call Brian made to Karli came shortly after Lynette disappeared. She told the Today Show that when he called, he was monotone and relaxed. She said she was in shock, not just because of the news, but because of the tone. She said she expected panic, fear, desperation. What she got was calm. What she got was the same account, delivered in the same flat register that he would later give to authorities. She described her mother to NBC News as an experienced swimmer and sailor. She said she had a hard time believing Lynette would have accidentally fallen overboard. She said she did not believe Lynette would have been holding the boat's keys, the safety lanyard, at that moment. She raised specific questions. Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Why did it happen the way he said it did? She traveled to the Bahamas while Brian was in custody. She gave interviews to ABC News, NBC News, Fox News, and CNN from the Bahamas, demanding a thorough investigation and pointing publicly to what she described as prior issues in the relationship, issues she said may be important for investigators to know about. To Fox News, she alleged that her mother and Brian had a volatile relationship. She alleged specific incidents of domestic violence, including claims of choking and threats. She said she wanted the investigation to take those allegations into account. Brian Hooker's attorney denied these allegations directly and specifically, saying he rejects all claims made by Aylesworth. After Brian was released without charges, Karli told CNN, "As long as there has been a thorough investigation into all the facts, then I'll have to live with the fact that it's an accident, but I don't think this is the end." That statement is important. She is not closing the door. She is not accepting the outcome. She is placing the burden on the investigation to have been thorough and reserving judgment on whether it was. What that clip delivers is a daughter in the middle of one of the most impossible situations a person can find themselves in. She does not know if her mother is dead. She does not know if it was an accident. She is asking questions that the investigation has not yet publicly answered. And she is doing it publicly, on camera, from a foreign country, because she believes that silence is how cases like this disappear. In February 2015, more than a decade before Lynette Hooker disappeared in the Bahamas, police in Kentwood, Michigan were called to the Hooker home. What happened that night produced a police report that is now part of the public record and has become one of the most scrutinized documents in this case. The report describes a domestic incident in which both Brian and Lynette Hooker accused each other of assault. The accounts they gave officers were directly contradictory, and the night ended with Lynette spending time in county jail. According to the police report, Brian Hooker told officers that Lynette had gone upstairs believing a person named Jacob Hooker and another individual were in a locked room together, and that she had tried to force her way in. He said he went upstairs to calm her down, and that she struck him in the face 4 to 5 times. Officers noted that Brian had a red, swollen, and bloody nose. The report notes he became emotional, saying he had not been hit like that in a long time. Lynette's account, given when officers brought her downstairs, was different. She said Brian had hit her in the forehead and had choked her. She said her children had locked themselves upstairs and that she was trying to reach them. Officers noted that she had no visible injuries. The police report states she was highly intoxicated that night. A witness at the scene told officers she had heard Lynette upstairs causing a commotion and had seen Brian go upstairs and return with a bloody nose. That witness declined to comment when NBC News reached out following Lynette's disappearance. Only Lynette was arrested. The charges were eventually not pursued. A warrant was denied due to insufficient evidence as to who started the assault. No charges were brought against either party. What the 2015 report establishes is not guilt and not innocence. It establishes that this relationship had a documented history of physical conflict, that both parties accused each other in that conflict, and that the incident was serious enough to produce an arrest and a formal police record. Karli Aylesworth cited this history when she called for a thorough investigation. Whether the 2015 report was part of the probable cause calculation that led to Brian's arrest in the Bahamas has not been publicly confirmed. When Lynette Hooker's disappearance became international news, journalists traveled to the Sand Lake community in Onstead, Michigan, where the Hookers had lived before taking to the sea full-time. What they found were neighbors with things to say. Jordan Plentz, 29 years old, lived across the street from the Hookers. She told the Detroit News she was not shocked when she heard about Lynette's disappearance. She described the marriage as turbulent, with a long history of fighting. She said she had learned about the relationship from Lynette's mother, who had lived with the couple. She said, "I wasn't shocked when I heard about it. They fought for a long time. The violence was pretty bad." Another neighbor, a former Kentwood resident, told Fox News Digital a different side of Lynette. She described her as just so freaking nice. She said Lynette was always the nicest lady and gave off a free spirit vibe. Someone who loved being on the water, who was building a life she had always wanted. John Waters, a friend who met Lynette at an oyster bar in Panama City Beach in Florida in 2023, told Fox News that the couple had picked up a boat in Texas, spent a year working on it together, and launched a life that looked from the outside like exactly what they had chosen. The Instagram account they maintained, called The Sailing Hookers, was a running record of that life. Water in every shade. Sunsets, scuba diving, paddleboarding, cinnamon rolls made in a solar oven. The couple documented their travels from Louisiana to Florida to the Bahamas. Her last post was a YouTube video of them paddleboarding. Her last Instagram update before that captured the waters near Marsh Harbor. She wrote, "Here we are at Marsh Harbor. The Sea of Abaco is very entertaining, and they say we'll have some fun if it stops raining." She did not know she had weeks left. She was documenting a life that felt wide open, built entirely on water and movement and the person she had been building it with. The gap between that image and the account that emerged on April 5th, when Brian reported her missing, is what her daughter has been trying to close ever since. On April 8th, 2026, 4 days after Lynette disappeared, the Royal Bahamas Police Force took Brian Hooker into custody. Assistant Commissioner Edvardo Dames told Reuters the detention was based on some probable cause they had. The specific nature of that probable cause was not publicly disclosed. Brian Hooker was questioned over multiple days. Under Bahamian law, a person can be held for 48 hours and then either charged or released, with an extension available if requested. His Bahamian attorney, Terrell Butler, told reporters that while he was being transported by police to the Soulmate, he fell overboard, handcuffed and carrying a change of clothes. She said he had to be rescued and sustained an injury to his knee. He was questioned on a potential charge of causing harm resulting in death, according to Fox News reporting. He was released on the evening of April 13th without charges. The Royal Bahamas Police Force said prosecutors recommended his release pending the outcome of further investigations. Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner Shanta Knowles confirmed to NBC News he remained a suspect. The investigation, she said, is still active. After his release, Brian Hooker stopped by the Central Police Station to collect his wedding ring and watch, held during his detention. Photographs showed him placing the ring, too large for its usual finger, onto his pinky. He then boarded a plane to Nassau and subsequently flew to Atlanta. Before leaving, he told NBC, "I want people to know that Lynette is my life, and we have been together almost half my life, and we belong to each other, and I mean to keep looking." He told ABC, my one job was to look out for her." and that has not happened. The U.S. Coast Guard's criminal investigation remains open and active. Bahamian authorities confirmed they are reviewing evidence collected from the couple's boat, including electronic devices. No findings from that review have been made public. What that footage shows is a man leaving a foreign jail without charges, picking up his wedding ring, and boarding a flight home. Whether it is the footage of an innocent man who lost his wife in a terrible accident, or of something else entirely, is what this investigation is still trying to determine. Here is exactly where this case stands as of late April 2026. Lynette Hooker has not been found. Her body has not been recovered. The Bahamian military has suspended its official search after exhausting locations identified through tide, drift, and wind analysis. Cadaver dogs were deployed from the U.S. Coast Guard in the days before the search was suspended. Their results have not been made public. Brian Hooker is back in the United States. He has not been charged with any crime. He categorically denies any wrongdoing. He remains a named suspect in the Bahamian investigation. The U.S. Coast Guard's criminal investigation is ongoing. Bahamian authorities say they are still reviewing evidence, including electronic devices recovered from the Soulmate. No conclusions have been released. There are specific questions this case has raised that the public record has not yet answered. The first is the safety lanyard. Brian told police Lynette was wearing the engine's safety lanyard when she went overboard. Karli Aylesworth told NBC News she did not believe her mother would have been holding the boat keys at that moment. The question of why the lanyard was on Lynette rather than the person operating the vessel is one that investigators have not publicly addressed. The second is the 8 hours. From approximately 7:30 p.m. when Brian says Lynette went overboard to approximately 4 a.m. when he reached the boatyard, more than 8 hours passed. He says he was paddling a disabled dinghy through dark water. The boat captain who recreated the route said the conditions were consistent with a difficult crossing. Whether the physical evidence from the dinghy supports or contradicts that account has not been made public. The third is the electronic devices. Bahamian police removed electronic equipment from the Soulmate during their investigation. Those devices could contain GPS data, communication records, or other information that confirms or challenges the timeline Brian Hooker gave. Their contents have not been disclosed. The fourth is the 2015 police report and what followed. The mutual assault incident in Kentwood, Michigan produced a public record of a relationship with physical conflict. Whether that history influenced investigators in their decision to arrest Brian and whether it is informing the ongoing investigation has not been confirmed. Karli Aylesworth has said she will not close the door on this case. The U.S. Coast Guard has said its criminal investigation continues. And Lynette Hooker, a free-spirit sailor who documented a beautiful life on the water for anyone who wanted to follow along, has not come home. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. She had spent a decade building a life on the water with the man she married. She posted about it constantly. The sunsets, the cinnamon rolls, the diving, the open sea. She was exactly where she had chosen to be. And on the evening of April 4, 2026, she went into the water near Elbow Cay in the Bahamas and was never seen again. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. He denies any wrongdoing. He says she fell. He says he paddled for hours. He says she was his life. His attorneys have asked for the benefit of the doubt and challenged every allegation his stepdaughter has raised. Karli Aylesworth says she does not believe the account. She went to the Bahamas, she gave interviews, she cited a history she says investigators need to know about. She is waiting to find out if the investigation was thorough enough to justify any conclusion. The U.S. Coast Guard has an open criminal investigation. Bahamian authorities say Brian remains a suspect while the case continues. Electronic evidence from the Soulmate is still being analyzed. And Lynette's body has not been found. Subscribe to be here when this case moves. Share this video if the full picture of what happened on that dinghy deserves more attention than it has received. And leave your thoughts below, because this case is not over. And the people who loved Lynette Hooker are making sure it stays visible.